Welcome to my first track guide for F1 2020 on the track of Spain. First of all, I'm Fraser and now we'll go over some quick facts. So first of all, we have 16 turns, we have 2 DRS zones, one on the main straight, one on the back straight after turn 9. The DRS detection zone for the back straight DRS zone is just in between turn 8 and turn 9, so just after that left-right chicane, or not the high-speed left-right chicane, and before the fast right-hander. The second DRS detection zone is coming out of the last chicane, right about where the pit entry starts. We have the 3 hardest compounds available for this race, so C3 soft tires, C2 mediums, C1 hards, which essentially makes this a one-stop race from medium to hards, hards to medium. You can also do soft to hard, hards to soft. With medium to hard, you want to pit around, I think, lap 17-18, and with the hards it's also around the same. Like, you can do a maximum of 25 laps on the hards, so if you want to go ahead and do the hards to soft, so 25 laps, and then the last couple of laps, so 8 laps on the softs. Since we're in Spain, the weather is probably going to be sunny once you're going ahead and race. Without further ado, I will show you the hot lap, and after that I will talk you through it. Now let us start talking about the lap. So first of all, obviously go ahead and open the DRS as early as possible and down. Coming to turn 1, you do want to place your car on this red and white curb. Don't go over too far, because if you put the right hand side wheel on that white line right here, you usually tend to bottom out at the curb on the left hand side, which makes your car go a bit slower. So keep in mind, middle of the car, red and white curb. Then you will see this escape road. That's your brake marker for this corner. Down to 5th gear. Narrowly miss those 3 sausage curbs. Try to have the middle sausage curb as your apex for that corner. Then again, be very close. You could place the right hand side tire in between the red and white curb and the yellow sausage curb. Main thing is, don't clip that sausage. Next, turn 2. Turn 2 is a very difficult corner. Either you cut the inside curb and gain a bunch load of time, or you go around the curb, which loses you a lot of time. The curb, or like how to ride this curb, is quite finicky. What I suggest you to do is, essentially, you want to cross over onto the curb as that white curb starts, just before the red and white, just before that white curb becomes red and white curb. That's your sort of crossover point, your point of saying, okay, I need to get on the curb. So go ahead and ride that bad boy middle of the car on red and white curb. The rear left tire also needs to be on this yellow bit right here, same as the front left tire. You will see in game, I don't know if you can see it on the recording that well, there's a sausage curb, or like a small sausage curb on the inside right here. Be sure to miss that completely, as well as looking at the throttle application. As soon as you get to the apex on turn 1, you already want to go full beans right here, because every time your car is straight, you always want to go as fast as possible, because the car is likely not as likely to lose the rear there. Fifth gear as well is super OP on this track, I feel like. Fifth gear gives you a lot of rotation and a lot of stability as well. Coming to turn 2 again, now looking at the throttle. As soon as you mount that curb, you want to ease off the throttle a tiny bit, about 75% to 70%. And then once you are leaving that curb, you want to get on the throttle right here, since the steering is a bit more straight than compared to here when you're coming out of this corner. Also, you might notice the racing line. You can't see it over there, but you can see it pretty well right here. You will also notice that this corner is on-cambered because it drops down very steeply right here. On the outside, you can't even see the gravel at some points. So keep in mind, the inside is on-cambered. You don't want to go out too wide, otherwise you'll be on the sort of less cambered part of the corner, which makes you lose grip and makes you lose the rear. Then coming to turn 3, very weird corner for some. I see a lot of people just going out wide too much. After turn 2, you want to position your car to the left, and then once you are sort of in the middle of the road, you want to have a decisive turn into the right-hand side. Look at me just keeping, or like trying to keep the same steering input throughout the corner. For time trial, you can keep the same steering angle pretty easily. If you struggle with rotation right here, you can also use the red and white curb on the inside. Though be mindful, it's also very easy to spin you out right there, so don't ride it too much. And that's that. Then also very important, don't do this for the race. You're going to heavily overheat your tires. You're going to have a really bad time, especially if you try to make this corner flat on, let's say, the medium or hard tire. The hard tire is pretty fine since it's a harder compound, less likely to warm up that much, but the medium tire, you definitely should be doing a small lift right here to protect the tires, and the tire wear is also less if you don't overheat the tires as much. Then try to stay as close to turn 3 right here. Gains you a couple of hundreds if you do this right here. If you stay a bit more to the right, you have less distance covered on your lap, which means there's some free time to be gained right here. Then turn 4, 50-meter board is your brake marker. As soon as you pass that, that's your brake point and turning point. You want to get as close to the inside curb as possible. You can even dip the right-hand side wheel about a tiny bit on the grass. Somehow it doesn't register the right-hand side tire being on the grass, so you might get away with it. Then what I also like to point out, if we reverse the footage a tiny bit, as soon as the 50-meter board comes up, the track is dropping down right here. It's getting its lowest point around the apex, so that's where you want to situate your apex in. Again, 5th gear, and then also pay attention to the track elevation at the exit of the corner. Once you sort of leave the apex, you can notice that the racing line is very easy to see right here, but very hard to see once you like look at the next to the white barrier right there. You can't really see the racing line, which essentially means for us the track is going sort of uphill. We can't see the racing line, which also means it's very easy to spin until about right here. So about when you get a bit into the advertisement boards on the left hand side, probably you could probably take that big ass Rolex sign as your point of where you need to be fully on the throttle as the track sort of evens out right here. Don't be scared to use the whole track. If you use the whole track, you can be on the throttle much easier because the racing line is only a suggestion. You can go out here and carry a bit more speed through the turn as well. For turn 5. On the right hand side, you will see a little rain gutter type of deal. Just before the 50-meter board, you can also take the 50-meter board as your brake marker. Go very slow through here, slower than you might expect. Go for a late apex. I kind of didn't go for that much of a late apex, which essentially cost me a bit of time. Down to 3rd gear for the initial part, and then on the exit you want to go up to 4th gear. Again, very easy to lock up since you have the track dropping down right here, more weight on the front tires. Funnily enough, same as in turn 4, so the turn before that, you can dip the right hand side tire very much onto that like rain gutter, the most inside part of the tire, if that fits or like not fit essentially lines up with the rain gutter, you should be fine. You could get a bit more angle into the corner, which lets you go for a later apex, which also means for us we can go on the throttle much sooner than if you were to follow the racing line 100%. Then on the exit, as I said, about when you reach the middle of those two sausage curbs, you will already want to think about accelerating out of the corner up to 4th gear. One of the corners which are taken 4th gear in this track. On the exit, again, don't be too scared to use the full track. This curb is pretty easy to ride. The only thing you need to worry about is not going out too wide. But right here, go ahead and straighten out the steering, so you use that extra set of track. Then for turn 6, well, it's not really a turn, stay to the inside right here, gains a couple of hundredths since you don't carry as much distance on the lap. Then for 7 and 8, around halfway mark of this red and white curb, again, dipping the right-hand side wheel very far to the right, almost even on the grass. It's the same as turn 5 and turn 4 in that aspect. If you go ahead and use that trick, you can carry a bit more speed, carry a bit more momentum through the corner, which is very important in this corner. You want to try and have the left-hand side tire on the apex right here on the red and white curb. I didn't do that. I kind of missed it, which cost me a bit of time, a bit of improvement right there. But left-hand side tire next to the yellow sausage curb, and very important, you might see me get on the throttle very early right here, just before you reach the apex. That is because of a simple thing called the on-throttle differential. The on-throttle differential essentially restricts the independent movement of the wheels, which in layman's terms means you'll be less likely to spin if you put a lot of on-throttle differential and you're on-throttle through a corner. This also works for Austria turn 1, for example. Just before you reach the apex, you already also want to be on the throttle just to get that bit of stability in. Be mindful though, don't set the on-throttle differential too high, otherwise you'll just understeer quite a lot. You will be about like 30 to 50% on the throttle as soon as you get to the yellow sausage curb on the exit of 8 right here. That's your point of saying, okay, I need to be fully on the throttle. It's fine if you get the right-hand side wheel on the yellow sausage curb. If you go further than that, you're going to spin out and essentially bottom out. Then for turn 9, please, 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 don't go and use this red and white curb. A, it completely messes up your stability of the car. B, it bottoms you out, so you lose a lot of speed. And overall, it's a mistake, or not a mistake, a very inviting curb to ride, but it's also introducing a lot of mistakes people do. For example, I see people going on the curb on the right, on the left-hand side to get a bit more angle into the turn, which you might think is correct, but again, since curb is bottoming you out, you might end up with a lot of understeer. Then for turn 9, to kind of try to make it flat, which I didn't in this case, which is a bit of a shame, you can see me just have a little jinx to the left of the steering wheel. What that essentially does is you load up the left-hand side tires, so it's easier to go through the corners. So you have more load on the left-hand side tires, which means more grip. Also in turn, that means you put a lot of load towards the left-hand side tire, which also means it's easier to understeer. So a really good turning point is key. Your turning point is about, let's say, middle of the white curb. You might think because of the delay, the brain has to react to stuff. As soon as you reach the end of the red and white curb, that's your turning point. The jinx happens just before we get to that end, so keep that also in mind to maybe try that to see if that works for you. Then, turn 9, left-hand side, yeah, sure. Right-hand side tires in between this red and white curb and the sausage curb. I didn't do it right here, but the red and white curb gives you a bit of rotation, so it's easier to make it flat. Sort of here is when most people are a bit scared or get a bit of an oversteer moment. If you have done that, I think you are doing, or like just having a bit of a late turn-in there, because the car isn't as straight as mine in this example, for example. Don't be afraid to ride that curb. The only thing you shouldn't be doing is ride that curb when you are still sort of turning. Very important, because if you go ahead and get to this part, to this green and white curbing on the outside, your car gets unsettled quite a lot. If you are still turning at that point, you can practically say goodbye to your car there. Opening up the DRS, coming to the new resurfaced turn 10. Your brake marker, you might see it on the right hand side in game. There is a bit of a gravel patch from the right hand side tire that ends right around here. That is your brake marker. You can theoretically use 75 meters, but I think that's a bit more easier to spot right here. That's where your brake marker is at. Down to fourth gear for the entry, then up to fifth gear. Very important. You need to slow down the car a lot, more than you might think, because you want a late apex and you want to stay on the left hand side, because the right hand side of this corner has a lot less grip, because I think it might be a bit more off camber. So what you want to do is have around one like a half car length to the left, even more in an ideal turn 10, about one car length to the left. You want to ride the inside right here, because that's all on cambered, which means essentially for us easier to get on the throttle, and with the late apex coupled with that, you can get the car straighter much sooner, which means a better drive out of this corner. For Sector 3 in general, I really implore you to just keep fifth gear through every corner except for the last chicane. It really provides exceptional stability and rotation through here. For turn 11, send the car in, go down to fourth gear if you think you might need a tiny bit more rotation, which I did need right here because I sent it in way too hard. Your turn in is just on the right hand side curbing. When that white part turns to red and white part, that's where you are going to turn in. Just like a couple of meters, 5 meters after that. Send the car in very hot, then come around for a double apex corner, very U-shaped double apex, not a V-shape, because if you do a V-shaped double apex, you're losing way too much speed, you're not carrying enough momentum, so try to take a very sweeping sort of double apex right here. Send the car in, then fifth gear, inside is on cambered, and it's also uphill right here, which you might see because the racing line is very easy to see right here, but not easy at all to see at the end of the corner. You want to sort of play with the throttle a tiny bit, which is made easier by fifth gear quite a lot, and get on the curbing on the outside. The curbing sort of bottoms you out, but it is not as bad as the one in turn 7 and 8, so go ahead and use that very much to your advantage. Concerning the double apex, around halfway through the corner you already want to go on the throttle again. You can go a bit on the throttle a bit earlier, depends on how much speed you carried through in the initial part. Then very close to the inside because it's on cambered to give you a lot of stability. Then for this corner, the corner before the chicane, keep it in fifth gear right here. Get as close to the yellow sausage curb on the inside. The red and white curb gives you a lot of rotation as well, so keep that in mind. You don't necessarily need to upshift to sixth gear. Depends on how much speed you carry through turn 11. Then be very, very careful with the rear right here because you have a lot of weight on the front tires. You're also going steeply downhill, so you have less weight on the rear, which makes the rear easy to spin around. Don't ever use fourth gear on the exit right here. It's so easy to spin out. When I did some testing, I usually spun out every time I tried to do that. Don't go as far as the yellow sausage curb because of obvious reasons. And once you're coming to the last chicane, you already want to start turning in and braking as soon as that curb starts. There's red and white curb before that white curb starts. And then fully turn in as soon as you pass that red tire barrier thingy next to the advertisement board. That's where you need to have a majority of your turn in. Then narrowly miss the sausage curbs on the last chicane. Very hard to do sometimes, especially once your tires are quite worn. Fourth gear through here, and then keep as much minimum speed through there as you can get away with. You can also take fifth gear on the exit, but then you will lose a lot of drive. Keeping a very narrow line and then getting the car straight as soon as possible, and that's a lap around Spain. Coming to the suburb, we have 36.32, which is actually pretty good for qualifying. Then transmission 55.50, you can go ahead and try 60.50 for a bit more stability through turns 7 and 8. Then right, left for the suspension geometry. Suspension 6.15174. I heard some people are trying 5.15175 for a bit more stability. The extra rear ride height gains you a bit of stability. I haven't tested it myself because I feel quite happy with the setup, but that might be an option for you if you struggle with this setup. Brakes 150, tires fully deflated in the front and fully inflated, so max pressures on the rears and minimum pressures on the fronts. If you're going to try and use this setup for the race, first of all, for the race, decrease the front wing to, let's say, 30 to 32 front wing, depends on how you want to set up the car, but don't ever have maximum pressures on the rear tires. What that does, if you have the full pressure since the new patch came out, it's going to completely, absolutely destroy your rear temperatures. So go ahead and put the rear tire pressures to about 20.8. You can also get away with 21 psi, but 20.8 is quite comfortable. I hope you have liked this track guide. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. Other than that, I hope we see each other on the racetrack, and you guys take care, right? See ya.